6:32, and we'll get this regular ADC meeting called to order. First, we'll start off with director comments. Thomas, do you have anything?
Well, the only thing I have today is welcome Sean, and we are finally a full board.
Welcome Sean as well. The only comment I had is something I think could free up maybe 100 parking spaces with 4 easy steps, and one would be a designated employee parking lot. 2 could be a shared valet parking service. 3 could be a ride share pickup and drop off booth location, and 4th could be maybe have some gift cards from Uber and Lyft available to people that visit the town center.
Well, thanks everybody.
Well, that and the parking.
Just wanted to say thanks real quick for the both the nomination and the appointment. Looking forward to it. Looks like we've got a full year ahead of us, a couple of years ahead of us. So appreciate it, and looking forward to working with the city.
Thanks. Ron?
Just same thing. Glad to have you, Sean.
Did they tell you what the newest guy gets to do?
I thought there was a detail there I missed.
No, you're good for a while.
The only thing I have is welcome Sean. Glad to have you. Otherwise, I'm good.
Same. Welcome, Sean. Glad you're here. I don't have a lot that's not covered in the agenda, so just for time's sake, I'll save it. Up next is city update with Brent.
Good evening. As far as the city update goes, I know that there was a question at the last EDC meeting about memorandum, or it's a memorandum of understanding with town center businesses and who signed that and what it means. Just to bring you up to speed, we had all of the town center businesses that were participating in that, including the small auto body shop, Aspen's, Schaefer's, Okies, Soul Freak, and then Skipper's and Joe Lee's. And basically it was a memorandum of understanding that the city now had 2 parking lots, east and west, and was just outlining the rules of engagement with them that, hey, this is shared parking. You're not going to have the ability to put reserved for XYZ on that, and there may be times when the city will need to utilize that parking for a city function or another function, such as a blood drive, which we have periodically. But we try to schedule, or even a farmer's market, we try to schedule those things and work with those people so that they're during off-peak hours. So obviously we're not going to schedule a blood drive at 7 o'clock on a Friday night. We try to get them in here late morning, get them out of here mid-afternoon, and they're on the road. So that's what that is. There's no mention of their parking being available to others, but there is somewhat of an unwritten understanding that they're all aware that the parking is an issue, and I think they welcome, they don't mind other people using their parking as long as it doesn't affect their business, which I think is a reasonable request. So particularly mornings, you don't want a bunch of people parking around Skipper's on a weekend breakfast morning, and they could be parking somewhere else. So I think they're understanding of that. But that was the meaning of that agreement. And it also outlined that the city was going to make improvements to those, and we have done that with additional lighting and parking stops and things like that. Just so you're aware. There was another thing, Johnny.
Was it with Galveston Bay or?
Galveston Bay, yes. It's part of the part of the parking study. It does show, and we can get into that. But Galveston Bay has a plan to, and they're working with the building department right now to build a elevated deck structure on the water. They've acquired an additional lot in addition to the original lot they got with the property. We're working through some details with that, but it's not going to have plumbing. Electrical is going to be a challenge for it. It's just basically going to be a place to sit and watch the ducks float by or watch the sunset. So that does affect the plan that is in your packet or part of tonight's discussion, but it's just one small part of it. And there are possibly some other changes, and we'll just address those during the parking study.
Is that gonna be on the north side?
That's on the north side, yes. And we have talked to TABC about liquor license and any problem with that crossing a public thoroughfare, but due to the changes they made during COVID to allow businesses to continue business with carry-out service and made that part of standing operating procedure, there's no problem with TABC as long as those beverages are in closed containers and carried out. So the trick is to make sure we get them across the street before they pop them open. That is an open street.
And I think Shellmark was maybe the other.
And Shellmark, yes, thank you. I forget because I work on this stuff and I forget how many times, so it's been a month for you folks. With Shellmark Engineering, we're about 95%. Hope to clear up that to 100%. Called and left messages. I'll also check in with him tomorrow. This is we're working to get the sealed final plans for Shell Bottom Park. So those improvements will be a paved parking lot, some additional drainage, a new boat ramp, some vinyl bulkheading that's subsurface to prevent washout, and then replacing the existing pier on one side and then adding a second shorter pier on the other, another L. Thinking in that is that allows additional for people to embark on their journey. They can tie off, get their vehicle out of the way, and somebody else can use the ramp during that time. Right now it gets kind of congested with one trying to get people in and out. And we've addressed some of the parking, so I think we're looking at 9 boat vehicle spots and about the equal number of single vehicle spots, incorporating as much space as we could in that. So hopefully that addresses a lot of things, and then we'll be looking at the similar pass-through decking that we have at Lowell Brown. Big problem that we have there is that when the tide comes in or we have a surge, it likes to peel up the decking, and so we're trying to avoid that by putting pass-through. So I don't know exactly what the timeline is, but I hope to have those things put to bed within just a couple weeks, and then we'll start working on permitting. You need those plans completed and signed before you can move forward with other stuff. So other things will start happening.
So is there any plan to put up some signage out there in advance of the work so that people will know that it's going to get closed for some period of time?
There's no specific plan, but I think that can be accommodated. We don't have the timeline yet, and it's really hinges on the ability to get the bids out and receive a favorable bid, sign a contract, and then see what the timeline is. I know for our fishing pier, it was 9 months for just the plastic decking, so and that was in the height of COVID. So hopefully we don't experience a similar slowdown. And I've had people inquire about whether it will be if it's going to close in the summer. I don't know, but we're kind of up against the wall, and we just need to, if they can start on it and they have the materials, then whenever that is, I would suggest we start so that we get that completed. There's not a lot of wiggle room anymore planning those out. You're kind of at the beck and call of your suppliers.
So we're managing the bid process and all that, and they're just reimbursing us when it's done?
Yeah, we haven't got the bid process yet. We're going to have help with Shellmark with that for identifying the scope of work and helping us out with that. We'll be reimbursed for the professional drawings at 100%. So I applied for a grant for that. That's about $25,000.
I'm just saying, when the bid goes out, Texas Parks and Wildlife's not going to really have anything to do with that. We're going to manage it just like if we were putting a road or something in, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What's the permitting timeline, you think?
it's hit and miss. I can't tell you. They do say it. There's with a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer, I think it's called a 404 permit, which is for the construction. I've had two conflicting things. One is that you supply that permit, and in 30 days you can move forward on under the assumption that it's okay. They're going to get back to you within 30 days. However, they're seeing, I think, some delays in that. They are still all working, for the majority of them are working remotely, as is Texas Parks and Wildlife. They're all working from home, so they don't even go to the office. And talking with Texas Parks and Wildlife, they strongly discourage that thinking because they don't want to get into a situation where there is a change to the plan that they haven't got back to us in 30 days. So once that is applied, it's at least 30 days. Maybe it's 45 or 60, but I'm guessing we have a couple months, and that's if they get right on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A lot of people have been asking about the boat ramp. So there have been several concerns about it being in the summer.
I know. I've talked to a few. And I've talked to some businesses also that were concerned that it would be closed, but it's a necessary improvement for us.
And to kind of tie on to the end of that, it looks like the amount's going to be a little more than first budgeted, and it's going to be moved over, but reimbursed at 75%. So I updated the cash flow statement, but it's after speaking to Brent, things are going to get jostled around, so I didn't pass them out necessarily. So.
Does True North Marine have a boat launch that people can use?
I don't believe
It's private.
I think it's just for their commercial purpose.
Yeah, because they could make a little money on this deal maybe while we're doing that. Somebody that knows them might tell them what's going on, and see, there may be a commercial reason for them to do it.
I think Marina Bay would do that too, because they've got a lot more stuff going on now, and they can take boats off and put them in.
I can bring it up to True North Marine and see if that's something they're interested in. I don't know if they have the infrastructure for it. If you've ever been back there, it's not really set up, but I'll at least mention it. If someone knows Marina Bay, I don't know if anyone else has contact with them. Yeah.
I think they have similar issues with parking because they have storage on site,
other things,
and parking's an issue. So
maybe they need to have a parking study.
All right, we'll move on to item number 4, unscheduled visitors. If there's any here, either of the two gentlemen here. Another. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. If everyone had a chance to look at it, we can move along unless there's something they want to pull out and discuss. It had the minutes from both December and January included. Is there any discussion needed on those? All right, cruising along. Item number 6, presentation, discussion, and possible action with Walker Parking Consultants. And this is Casey Wagner from Walker. He's going to kind of go over the parking study that I emailed out, and I guess the last version wasn't emailed out till earlier today, so hopefully you guys got a chance to look at it. But I kind of asked Casey more or less to kind of go over the executive summary and maybe the final conclusion rather than going through every statistic in the whole report. But feel free to ask questions as needed. But I think we're kind of mainly going to go over what they found and any conclusions that they may have.
Do I need to start with who Walker is or any background there, or should we just motor right into the report?
It's up to you guys. Do you have any questions about Walker, or do you want to mow into it?
You can give an elevator speech.
Yeah, sure.
Walker's been around since 1965, planning, designing, and restoring parking garages and help people solve their parking challenges. We have 20 offices around the country, and we have international offices as well. We're a company of over 300 people dedicated to parking solutions. I live in the Clear Lake area, so I've had breakfast at Skipper's. I've enjoyed a drink at Aspen's. So I'm a local, and so I appreciate the challenges that are presented here with this community, but also how unique and how special it is too. So that's the quick elevator speech. I've been with Walker 27 years. I've spent my whole career there, and if you have any questions after we go through the report, please feel free. So, when we collected data, it was a moment in time. It was late October, early November, and I've already heard some things change as a new deck's being planned for Galveston Bay Brewing, and which may impact the parking demand also. But what we have established so far is some criteria for what the parking adequacy is based upon what we knew at that point, and also what we saw when we were there at that time. We have a couple ideas on how we can expand parking and how we can meet this new demand, both in new surface lots or restriping existing lots, but also a shared parking program, which I also heard mentioned today. I heard the word parking mentioned 17 times before I took the podium, so that's pretty exciting. That usually doesn't happen. So I understand the challenges, but also I'm excited for you. You know, the town center is growing. You've got a lot of interest, and without accessibility through modes of transportation like parking, it could suffocate and it can strangle some of that growth. So I'm here to help you facilitate how to think longer term and how to encourage more growth with means to parking. So getting into the report, the executive summary, I'll just roll through that very quickly, and then if there are questions, I'm going to assume that everyone has had a chance to review the report at this point. And we observed 327 total spaces in that area, with 127 of those controlled by the public. So you do have a significant amount of privately controlled spaces in the town center. And the town center is what we identified as Joe Lee's all the way to the edge of the marina, past the hair salon. So there are about 102 spaces that are away from the core of the town center that are privately controlled. So a portion of those, even though they're outlined as private spaces, they may not be fully utilized by the public for some of the entertainment venues in the evening and weekends. Observed occupancy was peak at 9 p.m. on Saturday, although I have to admit, coming in on a Tuesday night, parking lot's pretty full, and that's exciting too. So we have 154 spaces occupied, which is 48% of the total inventory, and it exceeded the total public amount of parking that is provided. So you're starting to see, and I'm starting to hear, that you recognize that you have a parking problem currently. Proposed future development includes Galveston Bay Brewing, Soul Creek Bar and Grill, and plus adding to the existing capacity at Aspen's and at Okies, so that your evening and weekend peak parking demand is going to be increased based upon these developments. We identified the 3 public parking lots, the City of Clear Lake public lot, the Marina Bay Drive public lot, and the Aspen and Clear Lake Road lot could be reconfigured without adding any additional space, but by restriping those and making parking spaces delineated either through paving or with wheel stops, that we could increase that to as many as 29 additional spaces. But the bigger concern is that the public-private shared parking, there needs to be an agreement there met so that you take advantage of those resources, those parking resources that you have within the town center. And that would address the deficit of 141 parking spaces that you can envision with these new developments coming online within this year and next year. Another option we looked at was adding on to Skipper's lot. There is some area that is unpaved and that's grass right now. In the Skipper's lot, we had accounted for about 41 spaces. We could expand that to 88 spaces and pick up additional parking that way as well. The other opportunities would be providing new long-term a parking structure within the town center. And that isn't completely addressed in the report, but I want to start that discussion because it is a capital investment, but it's something that you should plan for in the next 5 to 10 years if you want to consider seeing the same sustained growth that you have had over the last 5 years.
The strictly needed lots that you're talking about is, or what we should have, is that Is that based on an experience factor that's what that size of a business should have, or is it just,
It's a good question. And we look at it a couple different ways. We look at what you are currently projecting on a entertainment venue per square foot basis on what we observed, but also that's balanced with the code requirements for building code zoning issues, and also the Urban Land Institute. So we try to take a blend of what makes the most sense, because we know it doesn't always go exactly by code and by the book. So we want to make sure that site observation that we had when we collected occupancy data coincided with the actual background data for the zoning and code information too.
When looking at the diagrams in your original report,
Yes, sir.
show the restriping, and looks like a lot of spots. I'm wondering how wide they are.
Those are 9-foot stalls,
9.
so we're still maintaining what we would consider a level of service A. You know, and it's a 61-foot module, which is 1 foot wider than what the city of Houston requires for their parking geometrics as well. So from nose of car, end of car, drive aisle for two-way traffic, all the way out to the back of the nose of another car, we're looking at 61 feet and a 9-foot stall, which is excellent for entertainment venues, for retail environments. If it was employee parking, we'd look at more of an 8-foot 6-inch stall and shrink down some of those geometries as well.
Okay, so pickup trucks will fit in those, okay?
F-250s, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was worried about. We have a lot of pickup trucks.
I'm a Texan, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you heard one of the things that changed slightly is that lot that we kind of had you guys consider as a public lot, and that's what we consider the little triangle lot on Aspen and Clear Lake Road, owned by Harper, because we utilize that now, and I think we figured there's about 10, you can fit about 10 cars there now. So if it was developed, they came up with a number of, I think, 24 or 25 spots. But just very recently, in the past few days, the Galveston Bay has officially purchased a little spot right next to it, and they're going to be moving a little bit more to the west there with that's not to say nothing can be developed there, but we would lose some spots and everything would have to be moved over to the west, a certain amount of footage. But if you look at it, it's actually not as much as I thought.
12 foot, right?
Yeah, it's not much. Not a big change, but I just wanted to bring that up because I know you heard it during the
Yes, sir.
introduction.
Well, looking at that area out there, and I've looked at it a couple times, especially since they cleaned it all up, really makes a big difference. But and I appreciate the Galveston Bay's thinking about that, because there's a place or a venue that you could get out there, watch the sunset, and be over the water. I think it'd be really nice if you actually made that whole space out there, graded it off, bulkheaded it, and made it into a park area.
Sure.
Because when Soul Freak Bar and Grill does theirs, they're going to have a venue out there, and they're going to have music, and you can have people over there, and they would be able to listen to it too. So you can make that into something more than, than parking.
Yeah.
And we did talk about at a previous meeting about having some designated golf cart parking, and maybe closing that Aspen Road off for evenings, making it just for golf carts.
Yeah, I think it's very flexible, and there's numerous options there, and it can be even mixed. If decide to develop that for parking, but then have the northern portion that starts to slope off into the bayou, into a green space, and or some combination of the two.
We could also do like a boardwalk that's actually on the land and part out over the water, and that way you could have, the land could either be parking or green space, so we could have it both ways. The thing about having a park down there, I think it's great, but I think having the deck there will be a lot better. I think that'll be, because they'll have tables and things there. And we got other parks that people can use.
I think there's still flexibility on that site. If we need to shift some of the parking away from the deck and move our lot line closer to Aspen's as well, we can revise that so there is be a net loss of 0 spaces on the layout.
when you think about the east lot, that one was done, as inexpensive as we can get it, because it was thought about as a temporary parking, but reality is we look like we're gonna be in parking business for a while, so, now, so we need to do all of those points that you mentioned, in the previous slide, but do you have any experience with this, intercity and business parking agreements?
We do.
You do?
We
Okay.
do. We worked around the country on developing parking partnerships with businesses and with public entities, and coming up with a parking enterprise. And you're looking at a size when you're at 320 some odd spaces. As you grow that to over 400, 500 spaces, it starts to make more sense on getting that moving forward.
Because we want to create a win-win for everybody, but,
Yes.
it's, somebody sitting on something of value, then it's a little different.
When you can share those resources, and then you can encourage more growth, everyone does benefit from that.
I noticed that the area between Skipper's restaurant lot and Jolie's lot, it's a grassy area now. It's not gravel or anything.
Correct.
But, I mean, it could very easily be gravel. I mean, go down Caliche or SB2 or something there, but can we not take that into consideration?
I did.
Okay.
You may
It
have
just wasn't highlighted.
You may have the report from last week. There's something that we just revised this week.
Where would
And
they
we
park
did
all
get
those
in the
tanker
grassy area.
trucks and things like that, though? I don't know. We'd have a problem with that.
AJ, can you scroll down to page 10?
Figure 8. We've expanded that lot.
I got you. Okay.
So one of the main things I get from this, taking
No, I didn't.
just a quick overview is we're short parking, we need parking. And really the only way that we can be in really good shape here, with all of the development that we expect in the next 9 to 12 months is, to work a deal with Skipper in some form or fashion. Because without all of those lots, all of those spaces that they have in that lot, we're going to be in really big trouble. So even with a formal parking agreement and every single one of those parking spaces formed, with parking stops, or we're going to be we're going to be at maximum capacity essentially. And if we don't pave it, that's another 25 spots that we may lose just from inefficiencies.
Correct. They were looking at a parking space adequacy of just plus 16 spaces.
Yeah, 16. And that's assuming, I can't remember if that's including a paving or not, but I don't know, so it just shows how desperate we need parking, and how key that little section 4 is over there on the west. And future alternative. It's a big section, and I didn't realize how big it was until I started working with Casey and these guys, and looking at overviews. Man, that's as big as our main parking lot, essentially, lot was.
And that's a good footprint, Johnny, for potential parking garage in the future.
Yep.
That affords you enough room to have your vertical transportation from floor to floor, and you're looking at a footprint that's about 75 spaces per floor. So then you start looking at elevating those decks, and concentrating 200, 250 spaces in one location, and what that does to free up more space for future development too.
Right.
Just ballpark, how much are we talking to build the ones, like a roof?
Parking garage?
Yeah. Per floor?
Well, we look at it on a per space basis, and right now costs in Houston are between $16,000 to $18,000 a space. So it's a substantial investment.
I just read in the paper there was a public notice in the local paper for the City of Dickinson Economic Development Corporation has been given a grant by the Economic Development, the Federal Economic Development deal, and they're building the garage for them down there. And it's going to have all the elevators, it's a 3-story garage and all that. So are you aware of any funding sources that we might go to for a grant for something like that? We might include public services like emergency services, because flooding here, it immobilizes our emergency services, and we're, shut out of business because of the flooding. And that we could tie all that together and have our command center there, park our police cars and stuff in that area. And maybe even someday we could consider making our, combining all that with a city hall down there or something on the second floor, and then parking below, and have those wrap parking like they do in the Woodlands and stuff. It looked really cool. The problem we have is, of course, is the elevation. You can't really have anything on the first floor because of the elevation requirements here. But
Right.
we need to find a grant, I think.
There is money available, and we have been successful with other communities in finding federal money to help support the construction of parking structures, because it is a significant investment. But when you think of what, and you make an excellent point, if your City Hall emergency command center is there, and you're able to dispatch your police vehicles to that location so that, those are out of any potential floodwaters. And you look at some of the patrons, if you have to have a mobile unit housed there, there's lots of opportunities once you get above the water to be productive once the water recedes, in immediate response, and especially to be in the zone where that's happening and not having to drive 15, 16, 30 miles away to be safe.
Quick side question from the new person here. Curious if we've looked at this from a kind of a traffic flow perspective. So with the 327 slots and 39% of the public, during the evening hours, that Saturday at 9 p.m., the majority of the people coming here are coming for private venues. They're not going to be going to City Hall typically at 9 p.m.
Right.
Have we looked at how that traffic flows during the day? Are we in a crunch, dawn to dusk, or is it really a couple of hours a day? Do we have a good feel for that?
Yeah, what you have with the retail and entertainment venues is you don't have a tidal flow of traffic. You don't have 327 spaces being filled like you would if it was a government agency, where it really is an 8 to 5 job. What we're seeing now, especially with work from home policies, is there is less of a tidal flow. And so the traffic impacts for these lots, as you have them spread out, as the businesses are spread out, there really isn't a peak time that's impacting anything that's degrading the level of service to any of the intersections. So there's still functioning, free-flowing. What I observed at 9 o'clock on a Saturday was a consistent traffic flow of people coming in and people coming out, but no bottlenecking or no delays.
Do you think that'll continue as we ramp up over the next year with these additional up to 500 spaces, or where do we start reaching that crunch point, do you think?
It depends on the signalization. Coming into Clear Lake Shores, that's your single source, and you've got multiple homes that are accessing that. So the arrival and departure of when they come and go is a bigger impact than in your economic development opportunities.
Brent, did we had some plans to do some intercity parking agreement. Did you conclude any of those? What do we have? What's current?
Yeah, that's in the city portion. That was a memorandum of understanding with the businesses in town center, and they signed an agreement that they understand that it's city parking. It's not just available for them. There was another thing that I was tasked with, and that was just to approach skippers, and I talked to Keeman about the fence that's between the west parking lot and their building. He's amenable to having that updated, replaced, but still needs a fence there. He's got some delicate structures there on the side of the building that doesn't want exposed, and doesn't want it solid so that he can get some light into his business as well, to get rid of that chain link fence. Those are the two things that I was working on.
What's the course of action then? Do we run with this and have the city talk to the businesses, or do we engage with Walker to do something more about that? Where are we at?
Well, that's kind of a question for Casey too. What would you recommend is the next step for us to look at for long-term and short-term? So is there something that we need to do to look at additional spaces besides this for possible structured parking? Timelines, funding, grant availability? Is that something that y'all could do, in a proposal as like a next step, or?
Yes. What I'd recommend doing, look at it in phases, is this first phase is trying to capture as many spaces as you can on the land you currently hold. And that's an additional 24 spaces, and that will help. The next thing I would do is looking at that public-private partnership and coming to an agreement so that all those resources are available, you know, acknowledging when certain peak times happen for different businesses, but also then making those spaces available when they have availability in their lots, and being open and free to that. Looking for federal grant opportunities for your long-term solution, and then if you do look at a temporary measure on Lot 4, well, we identified the skipper's lot and expanding into the unpaved space. I would just be cognizant that we don't want to spend too much money developing that if that is where a parking garage could be located in the future, because you're not going to get that money back out.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm just curious if there's other opportunities to the east of there. And I realize that's farther a walk, and you have to be careful when making patrons walk to a business. They don't necessarily like doing that, but you know, we're kind of constrained geographically. So I'm wondering if there's any opportunities to the east of there, or any sizable lots or locations.
There could be potential, but I think you touched on the subject. It has to be an enjoyable walk.
Yeah.
It has to be well lit. It has to be paved, landscaped, and then that walking distance, that level of service that people acknowledge as cumbersome, that goes away. When it's an enjoyable walk, you can walk a mile. When you're scared, or it's dark, or you're, you know, have trip hazards, then 200 feet's too far.
That's where the boardwalk might come into play.
Right.
Like the Kemah boardwalk, you don't mind walking all up and down that at all.
Yes,
so
sir.
if we had a boardwalk where you could come all the way down, it was well lit, and maybe had some things to do along there for the kids. Then,
Right. You mean like a bulkhead, a lit bulkhead and
yeah, with just
sidewalk?
a boardwalk out over Jarvo.
I was just about to say the exact same thing. I mean, the survey for Aspen Road shows it going all the way through to Short Road. So there's that lot between the body shop and where YES is, that
Right.
little strip mall. So there's a lot there. I don't know how much we can fit there, but that's not that bad of a walk if we were to have some sort of well-lit, paved pathway between that piece of land and Aspen Road, you know, connect the two.
Right.
And they'll be walking right past Galveston Bay Brewing on their way.
And potentially, you know, other future businesses. I think that's a big key point is, you know, once you have parking, it's a lot easier for businesses to come in. It's a lot more incentive because you know, currently businesses see our parking issues or start looking at ordinances and you know, doing the math, and it's a lot easier to sell when parking's already there.
It is, and then if you relax your parking requirements for new businesses, and they buy into a parking fund, so they would contribute dollars rather than build their own parking, the city would allow that. That goes towards more public parking as well.
Exactly.
There's probably something to be said for giving our local businesses an opportunity to advertise to those folks as they're walking by, and
Yes.
giving them some more exposure there.
Also, the lot you mentioned next to Frank's, they've already bought that, well, they're in the process of.
Okay.
They're gonna park their cars there that they're working on. So I don't think that'll be available.
It could be if you got creative.
There's so many
Assuming
cars parked there on the weekend, they just park them, clean them out. I don't know. They must have a cycle where they get those cars from the dealers. They mainly work for dealers, and they
Yeah, I
make
know.
little repairs on
Well,
them.
what
and
his
send 'em
plans are is to put a fence around that and then leave the cars out there. Right now, they're stuffing them all inside the building
back.
at the end of each day.
but you could
a
get
big pro-
creative to where if we did end up pursuing a structure, working something out to where, you know, maybe they utilize the first floor.
I'm just letting you know what he's saying right
Yeah.
now. And one other question, on the lot number 2, a big lot,
Yes, sir.
is there not an entrance out to 2094 anymore? I don't see it on the drawing.
I don't think that's truly an entrance from what I observed. When people were pulling in, they would come all the way through the intersection and then turn in or exit on the north side.
No, there's a driveway there.
There is an entrance right there.
There is an entrance,
Yeah.
but I kinda like the idea
safer
of
not
having
to.
no entrance there.
Right. So if you restripe
It
it,
creates
and
too much
take
traffic.
that away, you still
Turn
have
it
two
Yeah.
points of access
That way
into
you
that
have a
lot.
linear flow
That way you can
around
get a
there.
couple more spaces in there as well.
And it gets pretty backed up. Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but do you really want that?
And in peak hours, it can get backed up there already. Right. And we kind of discussed that a little bit with David Hoffman, the architect. You know, yeah, you're right. The original pedestrian spine was kind of through the middle of everything, just for that reason. But now it kind of looks like, you know, realistically, just the way that things developed organically, that it makes more sense to have it on the actual water and everything back. Mhm. Sure. Yeah, so I guess just let us know kind of what you recommend as the next step. You know what services you guys could provide, and you know what the cost would be for that.
Okay.
And we kind of know now, you know, through this report, what we need to do and the order that we need to do it. But you know, we need to be looking at, you know, near future and then distant future and planning for those things.
Do we need to make a motion to adopt or approve the report as presented, or
I don't think
do
there's
things
any.
like that?
I don't think there's any need, but
We just need to be sure it gets in the minutes and everything, 'cause that's the
Right.
only way we can keep up with anything around here.
The low-hanging fruit is obviously to maximize the current parking and make a deal with people like skippers, but we also need it to work, right? We don't want them to say no.
True.
Well, it's pretty clear the public-private partnership thing needs to happen really early, because that's the easiest thing to do, is just have an agreement there.
sure,
I
yeah.
don't know
And
who would be doing that?
like Brent said, he has. You know, we got a written understanding or memorandum. Is it written or unwritten?
Written.
Written.
Written and signed.
But
If you look to the very back of this, you know, they provided one that we can look at. I don't know if that's. I haven't seen our existing one. Is
But
it-
what I understood Brent said was not what we needed. It was specific to
The city lots, not to,
the city lots and
not to their
for certain times of
private
day.
held lots.
And for most of these businesses, the peak period, Skippers and Joe Lee's, they don't have a lot of customers.
Right.
Skippers is
Correct.
closed. So I don't know why it would be a problem for them, but that's the kind of thing we need that memorandum doesn't meet our need. You need a separate agreement to do that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
at the same time, we need, if you're going to be expanding, paving those two lots, you need to be working on RFQs for those, because you're gonna go ahead and do that.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the agenda. As far as paving, we have a little bit of information there, I think. But yeah, you're right on especially Skipper on, you know, lot 4 there. That's going to have to be a more involved, you know, agreement. We need to, you know, possibly offer to lay some gravel and parking stops down, and maybe even some lighting. You know, some sort of an agreement there. But like Casey said, we don't want to go overboard if that's a potential location for a structure.
Speaking of going overboard, this is something we already have on the agenda, but the big question is asphalt versus concrete, right? So I'm asking you, what would be your recommendation? Asphalt versus concrete in the public areas that we control right now, the public parking areas.
One and
You
two.
need to look at a geotechnical report to understand the behavior of the soil, if it's really a flexible pavement opportunity or if it's a concrete pavement opportunity. But, you know, the price for concrete is generally 20% more per space, per square foot, however you want to measure that out. So you take those two considerations into effect, I could probably come up with a better recommendation that way. Doesn't mean asphalt's bad, but, you know, long-term for concrete is generally better if the soil's suitable for that.
I think asphalt's bad. That's a personal opinion.
A lot of maintenance in
It's
asphalt.
bad.
Yeah.
I
So,
can't stand asphalt.
We have some very budgetary numbers actually since you and I talked about that briefly, and there's almost no delta between the cost as far as our soil is concerned.
Good.
So,
One final question.
Yes, sir.
Lot number 4, if that were just gravelled and parking stops, you know how many spots that would provide? I mean, is it the same as the number you have on the report?
We were getting about a 15% improvement on the other lots, 1, 2, and 3, or 2 and 3. So I would to back out 15% off that, probably close to 72 spaces.
You're gonna, you know, you gotta have the agreement first, and then you're gonna have to have a plan to do lot 4 in some way,
Right.
just in order to go through and pave lot 2, because you're gonna take it out of service for 6 months, roughly, to do the paving.
Right.
By the time you get to, by the time you're gonna take it out of service, so
You
you
do
gotta
that
plan
in-
for that, you gotta have an alternative.
You can do that in phases. I'd recommend, rather than taking it all out of commission, so that you don't penalize yourself too much. And getting back to the skipper's opportunity, if this helps, we could do a parking study just for his customers, just for his lot, so he understands, and he may already know this. We can document what his parking peaks are and overlay those with the public parking requirements peaks, so he could see that there's very little impact potentially on his business and his customers.
That will be helpful.
I think he knows.
I would recommend that we make a motion to allow Johnny to engage with Walker Parking to develop the next steps in the program and come back to the board for approval for any cost. Do you have a second?
all in favor?
Aye. I'll remind you of one thing, guys. The east parking lot was not ours, and it was chained off. We couldn't go on it. We couldn't use that parking lot. The lease said, I don't want people parking over there. Then they got a little better, and they kind of let us use it. Then we leased that parking lot for $750 a month for a long, long time, and we had in there an option to purchase that lot. And they didn't want to sell it. They wanted 1.3, I think, for it. And as time passed and situations changed and they realized, you know, what do you call it, progression of the families and ages and tax effects and all that, they made the decision. So what I'm thinking, any property we can get control of, whether we pay to lease that extra property at whatever fee it is, as long, I mean, our run rate right here for cash, I don't know about Plaza 10, but our run rate right here is $25,000 a month, right, Johnny? So if we lease that property with an option to buy it, and a first right of refusal if somebody else comes along, then we control that property. We can go in there, we can do whatever we want with it as long as we lease it. And we can have a 5-year lease, or we can have a series and renewals and all that. They're not using it, they'd get the money. So to me, that's how I built my business, by leasing properties and then using them, and then over time buying them one at a time, because I had the first right of refusal. They didn't try to sell them. They wouldn't sell them to me. The price was too high, but as you know, they kept the price the same, but inflation went up. So, you know, what they wanted to sell me for $350,000 15 years ago was worth that when I bought it after 15 years. So, as a business person, that's what I would do. I would enter, we'd go to executive session, but I would negotiate a lease to take whatever property, and I would take the Harper property the same way, and any other property we get on the other side of the body shop, I'd get out ahead of those guys and talk to the owners, and I would try to lease that property. And if this board spent $5,000 a month to lease parking, that would probably be the best investment we could make right now.
Any other discussion? All right. Appreciate it, Casey. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7, presentation and discussion and possible action with Visit Bay Area Houston Convention and Visitor Bureau, also known as the CVB. I sent an email out. They could not make it out here to do a presentation. They apologized. Adrian, I don't know if you want to bring up maybe just the website. Oh, okay. Thomas is supposed to supply Wi-Fi to the building. Wasn't that your... Yeah, that's fine. So, and you may have to help me here. You know a lot more about this than I do. So, and Ronnie as well. Ronnie has some background with this CVB, and Adrian and I and Ronnie actually attended, I don't know, maybe 6 or 9 months ago, a State of the Bay kind of luncheon, and kind of discussing their specific Convention Visitor Bureau. Most of the time, a lot of these cities and partners use their hotel occupancy tax to help fund, and whatever in the past, what they had a percentage of their hot tax they would put into this, and it's essentially almost works like a membership. So they help promote and market your city and your business and your entity through all sorts of channels. They basically are selling a subscription to their network. I don't know, as a non-marketing person, that's how I look at it. So they have lots of different outlets, whether it's social media and ads and stuff they push out, and stuff they leave in hotels and visitor locations. So anyway, they have recently reorganized their structure to help entities like us and cities like us that don't have any real significant hotel occupancy tax, because we don't have any hotels. And they're reaching out to other entities like NASA, for instance, so they can kind of buy into this. It's essentially everyone working together, different, like the Kemah Boardwalk has their own, and Kemah is part of it too, and Seabrook and others. And so you basically buy into it, and they help market and promote, in this case, the entire Bay Area. So they changed their pricing structure to now cities that have a significant hotel occupancy tax that can partner up with them as a flat $45,000 a year buy-in, which is significantly less than it was.
Even for our size
So no, they have had interest in cities like ours that don't have any real hotel occupancy tax, and say NASA and some other people. So they came up with a new kind of structure so we could buy into it as well. And they just got back to me a couple of days ago, so I didn't have tons of information. But it's $15,000, and you're considered not. I don't know what the term is, not a partner, but
that's the same as a parking lot.
You said 16?
15,000. 15 per year.
Any other cities, like Nashville Bay and Seabrook, because I'm getting a different situation where they're wanting to pull out.
I have not. I know Ronnie, I think, have you talked to League City, I believe?
No, there's been contentious for quite a while. There was used to be a much larger organization with substantial more people involved, and they were taking, like League City was paying over $100,000. Now they're doing, the last 2 or 3 years they've done $45,000. Every time there's an election come up, they say, well, we're going to cut out expenses, and they try to cut them out. But I've heard these presentations, and the city of League City has 5, 6, 7, 8 really highly talented people in their communications department, and they do wonderful things, but they can't replicate what this thing is doing. So they don't have the ability or the resources to do this, and Nassau Bay certainly doesn't. And they can probably pull out and save that money because they could probably use that hotel occupancy taxes to do better. But basically, if we get in for $15,000, we're riding on a much larger pool of money, that we can leverage to our favor. Now, we're not gonna get the benefit because people are not gonna come stay in our hotels, but I think we will get the benefit when people come to the area over time. So we can do our own marketing like League City does in Nassau Bay for that come to their city. This is to bring them to the area and to let people know that go into different, I don't know how they find them. It was a real sophisticated thing, right? Maybe you can explain it, but if anybody searches certain things, they come up through all these different channels, a lot of them. So it's awesome what they do. I mean, how they find people.
Ronnie, the only question I would have is, we're gonna spend money to try and bring more people in to visit, right?
Well, yeah, to build your brand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we don't have any place for them to park.
Yeah.
Do we need?
No, it'll be too late in a year, you know. We gotta get in, now yeah, right.
I'll be interested to know if it's true that somebody's thinking about pulling out. We need to talk to them about why. Yeah.
Well, those are rumors. If they pull out, then the whole thing will fold, and then we won't be involved. We just need to make sure that if Nassau Bay and League City pull out, we need to not participate. Is Seabrook Nassau Bay are thinking about pulling out? Well, I was like at the meetings, and they weren't there that I saw. So.
Well, nobody wants to go to Seabrook right now because you can't drive through there.
No, that has really nothing to do with it. It's kind of anyway.
The way I look at it is we've talked, since I've been on the board, a lot about marketing and coming up with a marketing strategy, a campaign, promotion, and we do these little ones and twosy $500 things, and that's great. But this is the easiest way, I think, to get exposure and Clear Lake Shores out there for $15,000. I know is a lot of money, but if you try to design a marketing anything from scratch, you're never going to have this reach right away, and it's going to take a lot more than $15,000.
When is their decision required?
They didn't give us a requirement for a decision, and they haven't sent any kind of contract for me to see if there's any issues with just not being involved next year.
So I think we should. There's been a change in their management there too. My thinking is we move this to the next agenda. And
from what I've seen, it looks impressive. I'm just curious why somebody wants out. Yeah.
Well, their big thing was they stated for the money that they're putting into it, they can do it themselves.
But they're putting $45,000 into it.
Well, they were putting a lot more than that.
At 100 and something.
I think the $45,000 is very recent. I think it's always been
the years before that they're putting a lot. But that's before League City had their own communication department. It was a cluster over there. But the last couple of years they've been putting $45,000. Well, I just know the League City people. I don't know the Nassau Bay people.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying take it with
sure.
salt, because you put into it, and then a year from now it closes down. What do those optics look like? The money that we put into it. What do we get out of it?
Well, I think it's just
eaten
up, yeah.
And I think if we were already engaging in some sort of marketing and promotional programs, and then we did that and it folded, that would be one thing. But we're doing nothing now, and it's
we talked about the
sure.
chamber getting a full page ad that normally costs $2,000, and we're able to get it for $900.
Right, and we'll never know if we don't make a decision to do something. And I think it's important to get our name out there, especially now. I think is the absolute perfect time. Adrian, do you have something?
Yeah, I think that one of the issues is that with this type of marketing, you cannot see a tangible benefit.
Right.
But the big picture here is that we're going to be part of something bigger that we cannot afford. And I remember when Amanda Fenwick was on the committee, and she was trying to bring something like this, but she was pulling numbers 40,000, 50,000, and this is 15,000. Like, I think this is a bargain that we have to jump in just to put our names. Like, all of them are there, and if it doesn't work, like, I guess, well, we have to ask if we can just kind of like cancel everything within a year or no. But I think that it's great. They have all the tools to put Clear Lake Shores on the map with all of them. And we might not see a specific number on how many people we're bringing to Aspens or whatnot, but we're going to be part of the bigger community where people from Houston, people from Dallas are going to want to see what's up there. And we just want to take advantage that we're close to Kima, close to Seabrook, you know, and I think it's a big advantage just to, you know, get on board. That's my opinion.
You know, League City approves this in their annual budget, so I would think that they're in there through September the 30th, so I don't know if they're approaching everybody for their next budget year, you know, which starts October 1st, or if they're, or, you know, how that part works out. But, you know, if you get in there now, if it starts now, that's great, but like I said, if they would have to stop it. Of course, they probably have a clause that they could get out with 90 days notice or something, so.
Yeah, I would just like to see what the agreement looks like and see if it's prorated or see if there's any issues if we do want to bail. Yeah, we can either make a motion or move it to next agenda, or I just hate to, if there's no prorated rate and we keep moving it a month. Because their fiscal year does start at the end of the year. They changed last I talked to them. Calendar. Last I talked to them, they were calendar year.
I mean, I was going to say, that's what you need to know if it's calendar. You really need to see the proposal.
Sure, yeah.
And see what the proration is and see what the exit clause is and those types of things, so.
And I got updated information just yesterday or the day before, so I didn't get a chance to email it around, but it has more information and bullets out what you're actually getting, you know, what they plan on doing. And some of it is targeted blog stuff, and we just provide the content, and Adri could help provide the content, and they fire it out and do all their stuff. So I agree with Adri. I think it's a bargain. You know if we're going to do any type of marketing or anything, I think for $15,000, this is going to be the biggest bang for the buck.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the $15,000 for the Bay Area CVBs, subject to review of the contract by our president and his agreement that it's within the it's the $15,000 value that we know it's supposed to be, or whatever, something along those lines.
Is it $15,000 this year, and then next year, and next year, and next?
Yes, it's annual.
So it's going to stay 15,000. It's not going to jump up to 40 or 50 at some point.
Yeah, I mean, they could do anything. Yeah.
But they can't. It's not the contract's for 1 year.
Right.
This isn't a super unusual thing. You know, the CVBs they're all over the place.
The contract would start.
I don't know.
I mean, it's whether we get a month extra or less. I mean, is that really what we're talking about? We're talking about $15,000. It's either we want to do it, or we want to look more into it, or we don't want to do it.
I agree.
I mean, whether it's prorated or not, I mean, surely that's not where it is at.
Marketing to me is
I
I'm
would
speaking
like
a
to
different
suggest
language, so I'm way out of my league here.
Ronnie, I'd like to suggest we
I would
wait.
revise my motion that we approve the CVB expenditure for $15,000.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a point. I would suggest we wait till next year to see if these other two cities truly stay in it, and give us some time to get our parking together, so that we have some place to put additional visitors if they do come visit us.
I don't think we're going to get that many extra visitors,
Well, then why spend the money on it?
because come the next year.
I mean, I don't know that I necessarily agree that it's worth waiting a year. As you mentioned, 15,000 is an excellent price for this. One thing I would like to understand, though, and I think it's already been addressed at some point, is the details of that agreement.
Sure.
And the specifics on what that's buying us. Is it X number of mentions, X number of publications, X number of posts? It'd be good to have those, for record.
This is actually looking pretty good compared to the 100,000 budget we were proposed a year and a half ago.
And answer your question, Sean, they did bullet out what that does give. So many mentions and articles and things like that. And
Well, I guess the only thing, and then the way I understood your motion, you'd approved to suspend it.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I guess my question is, are you gonna bring it back for us and go through what the, is it prorated, what are the ins and outs, can you get out of this thing, we need to know that, I'd rather just say, go ahead and sign on the
That's
dotted line.
his motion.
I think the motion was subject to Johnny's review and
Discretion.
approval of.
Yep.
There's a revised motion, didn't say that, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, well, so yeah, so we have the revised motion of approving the $15,000. We have a second. You wanna keep it as is?
I mean, you're gonna review it anyway, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, then, go.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 nay, 1 opposed. Alright, move on to number 8, discussion on possible action to enter into a contract with Cobb Finley to prepare engineering and bid packages for the city, lot paving, Ronnie Richards.
Well, I got a hold of Brad, last week, and of course, he's telling me that they are gonna have to get prices from some of the vendors that do like the geotechnical reporting and stuff. Today he called me and said that that we're looking at spending basically $1,150,000 to do both of these lots. And the numbers we looked at, the original numbers he's given us, the asphalt was just slightly less. And he said it's expensive because they're gonna have to remove a lot of the material that's there now and take that away and then go in. And I said, well, why do we have to have a geotechnical report since we've already had that done? He said, we had it done based on us putting in a lot with the shavings or whatever you call that, millings. So the people are gonna tell us what we need to do to make sure the concrete lot is sufficient. And so they will tell us how deep we need to go, what all the base needs to be, and we'll put in the lime slurry and this, that, and the other. But he said he didn't want to go forward doing a lot of stuff on it until we decided if we want to swallow the whole enchilada, or he said if we just say, well, we can't do that, maybe we'll just do the east lot, because he said a lot of the people he's going to have to talk to, the information he's going to give them will only be good for a certain amount of time. So he's going to have to also get it resurveyed and everything. So there's going to be a lot involved with it, and we need to think about that. I'm thinking, we don't have the money to pay for it right at this moment, that we need to, I don't know if we need to get him to go with the engineering package, start doing that, invest in that.
Are we obligated to use Cobb Finley for this?
That's a question for, we have an agreement.
We have a master service agreement with them, but we can access.
The reason for asking is that, we can access, but do we have to? I mean,
No.
I'm on the roads and drainage, and let's just say that we don't need to build any Rolls Royce, it's, and he does, Cobb Finley does a lot for TxDOT at the moment, and they're making, I think, pretty good money on it. And this is, I don't know, it's an inconvenience almost. That's how I feel anyway.
Right.
But this is my
Right.
opinion about it. And because we asked them about some roads we were doing, and we have to do this, and full depth reclamation, all that kind of stuff. And you're talking to the people that actually do the work, and they tell me, no, you don't need to do anything near that. And he was telling us in a meeting we were essentially idiots if we considered anything less than that. So, as an engineer, he's correct. But the thing is, we don't need to build, a cathedral.
It's got to last 30 years, or maybe 50 years, those parking lots. So we got to think about that. And the soil here is not great, so.
Well, yeah, it needs to be looked at, but also it needs some type of professional engineer to design it.
But, the core sample they take now, are they going to really be that different from what I took last year? Really? 2 years ago? It just sounds too...
Prepare an opinion based on the core sample about how the surface needs to be. So they'll come back to, in that geotech, if you read it, they'll say you need 12 inches of this and 6 inches of that, and all that kind of stuff.
What-
So they're kind of...
Are we doing all of this for the boat ramp for the parking lot there? And are we doing exactly the same there? Touche, yeah.
Yeah, when the engineer looking at that said it was on oyster bed, and, you know, with the shells, and he said there was no need to do that. So what we have there right now is gravel. So I had asked him if we had to do geotech and all that, so it wasn't necessary.
Okay.
I will remind you too, with the parking lot, particularly the east lot, I inherited that, and that was, you know, there has been a new focus on getting things engineered the right way, because our project that was up there that was supposed to be really easy, we'll save these grindings, we'll put them in a heap, and then we'll just spread them out and use them, was devised by, you know, residents and trying to save money, and then it went to heck pretty quick. And as far as
certain areas where there were mud, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but then that comes to question with you know, has those geosamples changed? Most certainly in those spots that were swampy, because now they've been lime stabilized.
Yeah.
And
so they're better.
Yeah, and they are. You know, went out there and watched the slurry go in and get intermixed. But you know, there have been changes in the focus of the city in trying to provide the best product possible, and it's part of our strategic plan, is to utilize professionals more, so that we don't have to back up and try to fix something that we think's best. So.
Well, to put it a different way then, you know, for some of the roads we're doing now, we're paying now, what are we doing, Reddy? Is it we paying 300 and something thousand for something that was 1.2?
Yeah, I want to say what was the number on the concrete that we paid over there for the other half of the road? It was well over $1 million something.
Mm.
And Brent, what we just paid for the section that we did? About 80,000.
Yeah.
Is it concrete?
I mean,
No,
Finley's fee alone was
It won't last very long. The concrete will be there for 30 years, if you want a long-term or short-term.
And it makes a difference if it's a secondary. If it's a
No.
We need to do it right. You know, we can't. We've got one now.
whether it's a primary or secondary road or light load, you know, the perimeter roads in Clear Lake Shores and of course Clear Lake Road probably all need to be concrete at some point, because they take most of the traffic burden. That's the way people come and go. And then we have a few east-west roads that are high traffic burden, but there's a lot that don't get a lot of work. So it's I think being smart, and part of that is enlisting the professionals for roads and drainage to go out there and conduct that survey and do that, do our PACER analysis to identify cracking and things that are going on with our pavement.
That's
it's a good example of utilizing those professionals for end result.
I don't disagree with that. What I disagree with is paying, essentially, it's probably going to be $1 million instead of a few $100,000. We need to, at least, if we're going to spend it, we need to know that that is the only option.
Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I hear what you're saying is we don't need Cobb Finley involved in the process. We could bid it out directly to whoever, 3 or 4 or 5 different bids.
He's going to give us some bespoke thing about how we can spend a lot of money, I guarantee you. I'm not saying anybody else is going to give a different one, but, well, our experience is that that's the case.
We can't bid it out ourselves.
We cannot?
So, but the first thing that you guys need is you need a core sample to know what you can put on that property, right?
Well, you can get Terracon to come out and do a core sample for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, he's saying they're going to need a core sample. Also, I asked him, why do you need another survey? He surveyed it, said, well, we have to make sure it drains, and it's changed since we surveyed it, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, so.
Brent?
But that's an engineering service, right? Your Cobb Finley, that's their prediction for the grade job.
Yeah, it was
Looking at rate changes, time.
right. It was like a $1.8 million start to finish, and that doesn't include any possible tank removal.
I don't know what we spent on Cobb Finley to do this.
We haven't gotten that far yet. It was just like a kind of a budgetary.
So why can't the city prepare an RFP and bid it out?
State of Texas, in the state of Texas, you can't have a capital project that costs over $50,000 without having a professional engineer stamp. And a professional engineer's not gonna stamp something that is not up to the standards. So because they would be sued, you know, if the damn thing cracks up and stuff, so.
I definitely was not lobbying for no plans, no. I wasn't lobbying for a trunk slammer to come out there and pour concrete or anything.
I think the big thing is the base. The base is, you know, what kind of base is gonna have to go in there, apparently is one of the big unknowns, so.
Brent, got a question. Do you know what it would cost for us to maintain what we have right now and keep it in decent condition?
With the current materials that are there,
Yeah.
I don't have, I've asked for quotes for that, and I haven't been able to get them. But I would think you could probably maintain the 2 existing lots for an average of maybe $20,000 a year.
Well,
The only problem we've had is there's potholes and they get worn a little bit. And I think we've been doing it ourselves.
And we had our last, the last contractor that worked on the surface streets went up there and spread some millings around for us.
So what if we could contract with someone to keep them maintained in usable condition rather than spending $1 million on concrete? We don't need it yet.
we just had a presentation though, talking about parking, so maintaining what we have should be out of the window, I would think. I mean, we had a nice presentation with a nice packet, and I think we all agree we need parking. So it's time for action. We need to do something. I mean,
Well,
Presentation didn't say that you have to have concrete. I mean, I brought that up. If it's not concreted, can we still look at the same number of spots?
you need to try that. Yeah.
I'm sorry? Well,
That's the only way to get any kind of organization. You can't depend on people to park right and act right when they've had a few drinks.
yeah, like you said, I think it was around 15%.
can you stripe gravel?
No.
No.
You can spray paint it, it'll be gone next week.
Just a question.
But, you know, in order to move on, you know, why don't we just get their proposal and see what it is, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Sure, yeah. I mean, this was mainly to get, I think, the conversation started. Just that, you know, we got some pretty, fairly detailed quotations, and now we know what it's gonna cost for concrete, asphalt, for both lots. and
then we can go out and get second
and Brad
opinion.
gave that to Ronnie, and it was like, you know, $750 for one and $350 for another, or something like that. And there was not much delta between asphalt and concrete.
I was only halfway joking then when I said $1 million.
It was one and an eighth million.
You were joking at all.
Will Continental do the core samples for you and tell you what your deal is?
Well,
Like last one
they
had
sub that out to,
That's only part of the big project.
they sub that out to Terracon, and then they have to do that, then they can come back and say, here's what it's gonna cost to build the thing. Mhm.
It's like figuring out what you have in place so you can make necessary adjustments.
The thing is, unless we get money, the EDC only with $500,000 or $600,000, and some of that's committed, so we would have to get money out of CIP or somewhere too to do the project, or Plaza 10 or somewhere, if we wanna do it now. But the way things work, it would take 6 months before we could turn dirt over there, you know, even if we started now. So we're gonna have more money by then, so we could do one parking lot at a time, maybe.
Yeah, but Plaza 10's not getting near the money you're getting.
We know that we're getting
They're
20.
not making that much money.
I know. Well, they can't park over there then. No, I know. It's gonna depend on,
bringing back
it's
six
gonna,
parking
it's gonna have to be the city or EDC or both. Is the only way we'll get it done. And then we can, how long we wanna wait. You know, if we waited 2 years, we could, or another year, we could pay for it. It's just, do we wanna start moving? If there's some way to do it in phases, it'll be more expensive, I think, to do it in phases, and costs are going up. I just talked to a landscape company today, the designer, and she said, it takes me 40% longer to get anything done now, and he's designing these big parks and things. They work with engineers, hydrologists, and all these different people. So, because of this COVID thing, people are not in the office. So, any project that would normally take 6 months is taking, 40% more.
Brent Jensen?
Yeah, make a suggestion that in addition to Cobb Finley, reach out to LJA engineers.
Oh, yeah.
I think and you could choose someone else that has experience with, surface parking and whatnot, and structures. A good civil engineering firm, and I have a list up in my office that I've utilized from the League City website. They have their people scored and available on their website. But I think for them it's really just a matter of Google Earthing that and determining the size of it, and if they have enough information as far as what the size is, they have enough experience to know what that's going to cost per square foot or square yard, and based on the current conditions. So you may find someone that comes in and says, no, that's really a $750,000 project, and then we can inquire, does that include stabilization? And you have geotech in that.
Okay, let's do this. So do we
And
have anyone that wants to kind of champion this? And
the approaches are already done, so they're already in concrete. So that helps. That's the hard part, and then we also have existing drainage in there. So. And
The only other
electric.
thing that you got to consider is that from a timing standpoint, you're also going to be considering the skipper's lot cost if you're going to do that, because when you take one of these out, you got to have that there too.
Yeah.
So if that's $200,000-$300,000,
Right.
that's on top of the $1 million.
You're gonna run out of money.
so let's approach, different engineering firms.
I mean, do we need a vote on that, or are we just going?
Well, I think
get
first
some,
we
you,
need.
You can get some bids and then see what it is.
Right. Yeah. Let's. If someone wants to champion it, I'll help. Anyway, as I usually do. But does someone want to champion this and work with Brent and start looking at it? Does anybody have any desire to do that? So we'll have to reach out to a couple different engineering firms. I think another good strategy is to figure out kind of what you mentioned, is to maintain it. Is it worth spending $20,000 in the next 6 months to get some, extra millings thrown out there and pushed to the edges where the grass is coming through? I have no idea. Maybe it's not worth it, but just an example. Worth to do that, in the interim while we're looking at a permanent solution.
Yeah, on their first estimate, they uses $60 a yard for concrete, for instance. So things might go up, huh?
$60 a yard raw cost?
Huh?
$60 a yard raw cost, is that what that is?
Yeah, square yard. And then they put in a 20%. Usually they'd use 15% contingency. Now they're putting in 20% contingency on these things. So the what they showed me on the one lot was $567 without the contingency.
Well,
that's without.
Jesse brought up a good point. We would have to, if we're going to do those lots, we'd have to do the skipper's lot, and can we actually pave skipper's lot if we don't own it?
Well, no, we wouldn't look at paving that. We would just be looking at it as a temporary solution to help us out. Yeah, right. Like the east lot. Or whatever he will agree to. I mean, there's a lot we have to do before that. I was thinking gravel and parking stuff.
Well, I'll look into a gravel maintenance company if I can find one.
Well, there's no motion to take, I think, with this, but it was something we've been needing to discuss and something we need to look at going forward. So we'll work a couple different angles.
You and Brent, and who else could work on that? Me, or maybe a couple of us could work with Brent on it.
Yeah.
Brent, did you hear that?
We'll get, instead of reaching out here, we'll get a plan together, like myself, you, and then if one other person, Ronnie or somebody, Jesse, wants to to all kind of get together on a email chain, and we'll say, okay, let's do this, and this, and we'll move forward.
Full disclosure, I've had two concrete vendors of mine just price it out just to see what it would take based on the design that we have now. Now I know that is 5-6 years old, whatever it is. So I can share that with everybody. That's not a problem, but it wasn't anywhere close to 1.3. But nevertheless, that's based on drawings that are old.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like we have a third party. Okay, that sounds good. Any further discussion? All right, we'll move on to the last item number 9, discussion on possible action to contribute $5,000 for the city's 60th anniversary program. And this was Brian.
Go ahead.
This is, we are on the 60th anniversary of Clear Lake Shores. There's a lot of other cities around us that are 60 years old this year. It's pretty amazing. There was a lot of activity in 1962.
Houston was grabbing up all the property and annexing everything in the 60s, so my dad was in business here. All the people got together, and Kemah, all the places, and they incorporated it so they didn't want to be part of Houston. That's why that happened. NASA was booming, coming in.
League City, I think, was the same way. So, but we are in the 60th year, and Adri's working with a committee of interested individuals to try to plan some things. She's going to explain the summary of this, and then I'm going to talk some dollars and cents with you, and I'll explain my methodology.
All right, so we are going to have 2 big events, right? Well, every month we're going to have a little event. It's going to be like a video, a post on Facebook, anything that explains and shares a story about Clear Lake Shores, how it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the hurricanes throughout the year. So something every month that will explain how Clear Lake Shores was and how Clear Lake Shores is right now. We want to interview residents. We want to do a little spotlight on the oldest house in Clear Lake Shores, so we can just kind of like get everybody into the same page and get everybody excited, right? Besides that, we're going to have 2 big events. The first one is going to be on April 30th. That will be Picnic at Jarvo. This is going to be a free event for everybody. We're going to have music, a lot of food, some trivia games for the kids. We're trying to have a raffle. We're going to have giveaways, and we're trying to put also a car show, like a 1960s themed car show together, kind of parade around the island. Again, this event is going to be free. The other one, that's going to be a gala. This is going to be a paid event, so we're going to start selling tickets very soon. This event is going to be on December 8th at South Shore Conference Center. This is an adult-only event only. We're going to have a 3-course meal, 2 drink tickets. We're going to have music, dancing, and a presentation recognizing the 60th anniversary, right? Now, let's talk about expenses and our budget. What we have so far in expenses, this is like an overall, like a very brief summary about of all expenses. So the first one is the gala. We're planning on having 200 guests in this event. Now, again, let me remind you that this event should be covered by ticket sales. The other event, Picnic at Jarvo, that should be around $4,000, including music, including food, including games, and the raffle and giveaways and whatnot. The other one, the city paid for 50 banners that are going to be mounted on Clear Lake Road on the poles. There's only space for 24, so the other 26 banners need to be mounted around the city. That's why I split it into column row 3 and 4. It's a different pricing. In case we want to mount the other ones, that will be the pricing for hardware. We're going to put together a CLS60.com website, and we're going to have printed material. For example, the calendar that we were showing earlier before the meeting. And we're going to do a coffee table book with photos of pictures of Clear Lake Shores back in the days and their history. And that is not only for the 60th anniversary, it's only like just for Clear Lake Shores in general, somebody who wants to have a coffee table book of the city. And then, of course, promotional material for sale or giveaway. That includes T-shirts, mugs, koozies, keychains, and whatnot to give away or for sale. And the raffle item. The committee was trying to purchase a raffle item, but maybe it's a better idea to look for a donation so we can sell raffle tickets throughout the year. And now, revenue. So this is the tentative revenue from sales. the events should be self-sustained. So if we sell 200 tickets, $100 per ticket, we should cover the $20,000 expense. Printed material, let's say that if we sell 75 calendars at $20 and 50 coffee table books at $50 each, we're going to get $4,000. And then, revenue from the banners, revenue from promotional material, and raffle tickets. Right now, the city approved $2,500 as a budget, and we have a tentative funding sources that Brent is going to talk about.
So she gets all the fun stuff, and I get to talk about the unfun stuff. No. So, as you can see, you read down there, basically the bottom line is $32,500. And I have this on the agenda because when I sat with Johnny and we worked on the budget, we had a budgetary number for promotions. And part of that just happened to coincide with another item that's on this agenda, which was the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So originally, CVB, that now has come down in price. I think it was originally we thought was going to be around $25,000 for the year, and so that was budgeted for, and then there was an additional $5,000 that was earmarked for the 60th anniversary for the city. It's really important. I think it would help draw business and get it in front of people. If you haven't noticed, we're branding a lot of things with the 60th anniversary logo. If you check out the website, you'll see that. We have that on those calendars. The effort so far has been the city's been providing some money and working on getting the venue. The venue at South Shore Harbor is large enough to accommodate that number of guests. There's nothing in Clear Lake Shores that can accommodate that number of guests, so that's why we're at South Shore Harbor as opposed to within the city and supporting one of those. The Civic Club is a partner, and they're helping out with some of the things that we don't do so well as a city. They function very well in planning and identifying needs and filling in the blanks and getting things filled in. And they have a lot of experience with that, with all the other events that take place in Clear Lake Shores. So I think they have some seed money in there on possibly calendars. And I just bring this forth to the EDC. I wanted to, number one, just let you know where money's going. I was going to request, I had $5,000 in the budget, but if there's any more that we can squeeze out and you're willing to approve, we can apply that to this. And my intent's not to spend every penny. A lot of it's going to be self-supporting, but it requires some money up front and to get the ball moving. And I think it'll be a good opportunity for us to get some pictures and really tout the history of the city. And hopefully we can connect with not only the businesses that are here, but get the attention of other businesses. We don't have a lot of space, but we do have some available ETJ land that eventually is going to be developed, and that's kind of the, looking out into the horizon, trying to plan for the future. So I'm looking for possibly some development or talk of development in the ETJ once Daniel Drawer Avenue is completed and we have that connector. So if you haven't been out there to see that, the concrete's in, so they're working on the connection to Hanson. So are there any questions with this? Any suggestions? I was going to stay with $5,000, but I will entertain the possibility of maybe a little more.
I'll make a motion to approve the $5,000 for the 60th anniversary party.
So I'll second that.
I'm sorry. Part of this is that so you know where your money's going. It's going to go into those banners and any additional hardware as we spread those around. The plan is that we have them up and we tout the 60th. When it's all over with, we're probably not going to need 60th anniversary banners. So those could be converted. We could sell them. And people could buy them. They'd fold them up, and 100 years from now, Antiques Roadshow, they can
just make sure they get a permit before they put them up, please.
Yeah. No feather banners.
Can you convert one to jamming on Jarvo's banner?
Yes,
The
so
other
that was the
side.
thought too, was, you know, the original plan for Clear Lake Road is actually a banner on top, running those and a banner down below. We never have had the banner down below, so we're looking at doing the hardware for that. I don't know where these will go, so you'll have your seasonal banner up top and your monthly, awareness banners down below. And then the other ones would go around the city or mainly on 2094 to advertise the city. And just working with other cities, Olago, Seabrook, League City, it's, you know, running in the same avenue, what they're providing for the city and giving back to the residents. Like the promotional items. I know the Civic Club or the committee's looking at giving possibly I forget now, what was it that you were looking at, Adri? A cooler? Yeah. A cooler or something to every single resident. But I don't know where that plays out in the money thing. So at the end of the day, you would want to make a profit would be great, and that would go back towards the only place that we can really hold that is the Civic Club legally, and that would go back towards scholarships or something like that. So
I think the yacht club ought to match our donation too.
yeah, there you go. So we really appreciate the EDC's funding, and the 5,000 was in the budget. So of course, anything over that would be greatly appreciated.
My question is, so yeah, we did talk about 5,000 when our marketing and promo we thought was going to be higher, but now that it's less. You know, there is some more room there that was budgeted for on that line item on the budget. But if you know, we approve 5,000 like Ronnie's, you know, like your motion, I guess it still gives us, we could still look at this another month or two from now, especially when it comes to promo items. So I think it's important for us to focus our money, obviously, on promoting and marketing the city. You know, whether it's sponsorship of the picnic and then the banners and things like that. You know, typical EDC stuff. But I guess if depending what the budget looks like in a month or two, is that something that could easily say, hey, we're looking at this other promo item, it's going to be this much, and we can improve something different. Is that a good mechanism, or is that a good logic behind that?
Yeah, I think that's very logical and very doable. So
that way we can keep it at 5,000, knowing that that's kind of what we talked about before, and then
as long as we all get tickets to the gala.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's important to keep those separated. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. I think that'd be best. You want to do it at each meeting, maybe have like a status. This is how much that we've spent. This is what we're using it. I think that's perfect. And then should something else arrive, I mean, that's, you know, it's going to be a year-long thing. So.
We could put more into our Jarvo, jamming on Jarvo.
We have any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Pass unanimous. No nays. All right, everybody. Adjourn. It is